Imagine a Paleolithic night. The fire is dying, casting long, frantic shadows against the cave walls. You are exhausted, slumped against cold stone, when you realize the truth. The person entrusted to guard the collective stash has failed. The food is gone. In that split second, a cold adrenaline spikes in your veins. It isn't just annoyance, it's a terrifying visceral signal that your survival, and your child's next meal, is at stake. You aren't merely witnessing a mistake, you are witnessing a threat to the tribe. But was ancient justice a system of cold, calculated logic, or were we just primates acting on raw, chaotic rage? What if I told you that the flicker of anger you feel when someone cuts in line today isn't just modern impatience? It is the exact same biological software your ancestors used to decide who lived and who was cast out, forever alone. Most of us instinctively picture ancient life as a lawless, chaotic realm, governed by little more than might makes right, or unchecked, savage cruelty. We assume it was a time of brutal survival, where power was the only currency. But this view gets the math of evolution backward. In truth, chaos is a death sentence for a small nomadic band. A small group of 30 people simply cannot afford the luxury of internal violence or unpredictable theft. They didn't need laws etched onto stone tablets to maintain order. They possessed something far more terrifying and effective: constant, suffocating accountability. To understand their world, we must set aside our modern sensibilities of individual human rights and adopt the cold, clinical perspective of group efficiency. If you were a free rider, someone who consumed precious resources without contributing your share, you were never viewed as a mere nuisance. In the eyes of the collective, you were a pathogen. And when a pathogen threatens the survival of the organism doesn't hold a trial. It performs social surgery. That is pure survival. To understand why that surgery was necessary, we must look at the free rider problem. Humans are a hypersocial species. Our survival success didn't come from claws or speed, but from the very power of cooperation. Our evolutionary strategy relied on reciprocity, the ruthless logic of tit for tat. You help me hunt today, I share my fire tonight. When that loop is broken by a cheater, a social contract begins to dissolve. If one person constantly takes without giving, the group's stability crumbles. We see this dual nature reflected in the fossil record. We find ancient skeletons with healed injuries, proving that our ancestors cared for the sick and infirm. But alongside that tenderness, we find the harsh marks of violent correction. In the unforgiving climate of the Pleistocene, you didn't have prisons, you had something much more final: ostracism. To be cast out was not just a social snub, it was a death sentence. Without the protection, heat, and calories of the group, your life expectancy plummeted to near zero within days. Because expulsion was synonymous with extinction, it was an incredibly rare event. You didn't actually need to banish many people to keep a tribe functioning. The very omnipresent, quiet threat of being left alone was the ultimate deterrent. It successfully kept the social machinery humming in ways that modern jail cells struggle to replicate. But why would an individual risk their own safety to punish someone else? Scientists call this altruistic punishment. It's a counterintuitive behavior where we pay a personal cost, perhaps risking physical retaliation or social fallout, to correct a cheater. We like to think we're just virtuous citizens protecting morality, but that's a post hoc rationalization. In reality, your brain is simply hardwired to enforce the cooperation standard. It is an urgent, non-negotiable imperative. The biology behind this is surprisingly intoxicating. Neuroimaging studies show that when we successfully punish a social transgressor, our brains release a hit of dopamine. Yes, you get a literal chemical reward for bringing a cheater to justice. It is a biological nudge designed by natural selection to keep the tribe stable at any cost. This system, perfected over hundreds of thousands of years, didn't just vanish when we built cities, it merely adapted to the new environment. Look at the mechanics of modern gossip, social media shaming, or call-out culture. These are not modern moral inventions, they are digital adaptations of ancient, band-level ostracism. When you feel that sharp, righteous heat rise when reading a controversial post, you aren't just observing society, you are engaging in the same psychological policing that kept your Paleolithic ancestors alive. You are using the oldest software on Earth to navigate the digital world without ever realizing the source code. As humans transition from nomadic bands to agricultural city-states, the scale of our existence fundamentally shifted. In a village of 10,000, the ancient mechanism of personal reputation finally broke. You could no longer rely on the fact that everyone knew your lineage or your past behavior. You were surrounded by strangers. When anonymity rose, social trust began to fray. To survive this growth, humanity invented something new, the codification of law, most famously known as lex talionis, or an eye for an eye. We reflexively recoil at this phrase, viewing it as a symbol of primitive barbarism. But we are misreading history. Lex talionis wasn't a license for cruelty, it was a desperate, necessary limit on revenge. In a world without police, if someone wronged you, the instinct was total, unlimited retribution, often leading to generational blood feuds that could destroy entire lineages. By mandating that the punishment must match the crime, early civilizations placed a cap on violence. It was the first legislative break on the human impulse for destruction. With this tectonic shift, justice moved away from personal reputation and tribal consensus toward the cold, distant, and unyielding authority of the state. We effectively traded the messy, unpredictable, and intimate justice of our ancestors for the rigid, systemic, and institutionalized power that we still live under today, binding us to the modern machine. We like to believe we have outgrown the primitive, visceral urge to punish, but that is a comfortable illusion. In truth, our modern justice system is merely that ancient survival mechanism wearing a sharp suit. We still see this conflict clearly. The desire for retribution, punishing because it feels deeply right, frequently overrides the modern pursuit of rehabilitation, which seeks to fix broken behavior. Why? Because the brain does not care about social outcomes, it cares about social signaling. When we demand harsh sentencing, or obsess over the downfall of a public figure, we have to ask ourselves a difficult, uncomfortable question. Are we actually seeking the scales of justice, or are we secretly chasing that old neurochemical dopamine hit? We punish the other to solidify our own group identity, using a prehistoric mechanism to navigate a world that has fundamentally changed. We remain hardwired for the tribe, choosing instinct. Deep down, we are still those hunter-gatherers, huddled around the dying fire, terrified of the one who breaks the rules, because we know the group is all we have. Ancient humans punished to ensure their survival in a brutal world. We, however, have the luxury to punish, in the pursuit of truth and healing, but the ancient architecture remains. The next time you feel that sudden, sharp surge of righteous anger at a wrongdoer, recognize it for what it truly is, an ancient, biological instinct, trying desperately to protect a tribe that no longer exists. Be aware of the impulse. Feel the heat of it, understand its source, and choose your response carefully. Do not be a slave to biology.